Greetings, I'm Dwayne, and just wanted to spend a little bit of time this time going over our top hats. Our top hat, floppy hat, whatever you want to call it there. I got a number of people requesting information on how to make that. Now, I've done tutorials in the past where I have shown with other things, but we're just going to concentrate on the hat for this time and show you how to make this. It's a simple pattern again. It's just got 3 pieces, and one of the great things again, you can either sew it or you can do it all with hot glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with my basic pattern. This is part of my basic patterns here. And I'm going to take one of our regular 9 by 12 pieces of felt and just fold that in half lengthwise. This is going to make the top part of my hat. I have my pattern here that's 3 inches by 4.5 inches. And that's why, because this is 9 inches, I can just fold that in half and get my 4.5 inches there. So I'm going to use that as my basis there to start with. So I simply just cut that out, my first piece. And now I choose the 3-inch just because I like the way it came out. When I first started making these hats, I did more of a 4-inch hat, which is fine if I'm using like a larger gnome. That was looking great. When I started doing most of my basic gnomes, the 3-inch hat worked great. So you can actually just lengthen that side if you want. Make it like 4 inches and you get a little bit of a longer hat. The other trick is too, is if you want to make something shorter. Let's say you have, like you want to do a barbershop quartet. Those are real cute. They're a smaller hat. And what I would do with that is I would probably just take one and do it about 1.5 inches on that hat. So I'm cutting that like in half and making that. The height isn't going to make a difference. It's going to be as far as putting the top on. It's going to make the difference. But I can use that now to make my barbershop quartet hat. And it's going to be like half the size here. So a couple different ways just to start out there and tell you that you can actually play with that. Play with the height. Do what you would like to do with that to make your hat. But again, with my gnomes, the good 6-inch gnomes, the hat seems to be working out quite well there. And I'll show you some other tricks with that too as we go along here too. So I got my round part of my hat cut out. Then I have my rim and the top of the hat. And I've designed this so you can actually get the rim and the top out of the same piece. And originally I made it a circle and found that it was a lot easier to cut out as a half circle. So I cut out my circle originally and then folded it in half. So you can do just from the pattern, cut out a half to do that. But what you're doing is you're taking your felt, you've already folded it. I folded a little bit more just to even it out a little bit, just so I'm not wasting material. I got extra material I can use for other things rather than putting it up here and putting a big hole in something into it. I always like to reuse if I can possibly use it on another project. Use it into putting together something else. Again, the vest. I might decide to go with that same color vest. That would be a great thing. If I'm working on a gnome to put together, I can put my gnome pattern right in there for the vest. And I can get a hat and vest that are the same color. So it just gives me a couple ideas there as far as doing that. Now here, the outside rim, I could just cut along. If you want a wider rim, cut a little wider. Again, this is not going to make as much of a difference in your pattern. The witch's hat that I did for Halloween there had a wider rim to it. Same type of concept. So I'm going to put this aside here. Like I said, use it for another project. Here's where the inside is going to be the top of your hat. So I'm going to cut along that. Give me my top of my hat here. And so there I'm going to have my rim, my hat, the circular part, and the top. So those are the 3 pieces right there. Now, as I said, the good thing here is I can either sew up the side or I can hot glue it. Either one. Again, I like to do the blanket stitch, so I'm going to show you the blanket stitch here for those of you who aren't totally familiar with that. But you could, either with your sewing machine or just a seam, put a straight stitch right up there too. Either way. With the blanket stitch, I'm going to start at the top here, poke down through, come around, do it again, and then what I'm doing is going through the thread. And again, just up a little bit and through the thread. So every time I bring it and I go through the top here, and I'm winding it through my thread there. That's going to give me the blanket stitch. Also, if you're going to do anything as far as I do for like Unny's hat, my character in my book there, I do the outside of his hat with the blanket stitch. This gives me practice. People say, wow, look at your stitching's going real well. Well, that's because I practice it every day, basically, when I'm building a gnome. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to stitch this all the way up to the side here, all the way up to the top right there. I'm going to grab one here that's already done here. But also, as I said, you can do that with the hot glue. Let me move my pattern out of the way. I have a tendency to glue things to my patterns. You can do that with the hot glue by just gluing a quick little seam on there, gluing that down. I can't tell you how many times I've glued the stuff to the table too. And we already have a seam made there. Now, we're going to add the top to the hat. And again, we could do that with the hot glue. We could do that with the blanket stitch there too. So let me grab another piece here. We're going to show you again how to do both. I start right there at that seam. I line this up and I just go around. I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue on there. Get it started. And then just follow the circle around. We're going to eventually turn this inside out. And again, we're just going to glue and keep going all the way around there. I'm going to grab this to show you the stitching part here. Grab another needle here, thread. And we're going to start at the seam. I just poke it right through there. And once again, I can either just stitch around. I like to do my blanket stitch. I think I find that to, just gives it a great closure to it. And it's good practice. You just take it, the needle, go down through, and just right through the thread there. And then once again, my wife says it's always like those cooking shows. I always have the turkey in the oven already baked. I've already gone all the way around. So I get there, I've got my seams all made. Again, I could do this with hot glue, have it all together, then I turn it inside out. So this there gives me my basic hat, the shape there. Now all I need to do is add my brim there to it. Now this here is the trick. because this is actually a little bit bigger in size. So what we want to do is cut it. Now the witch's hat that I did exactly to the size of the witch's hat. It comes out a little bit more. So we were able to do something to just put it on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up back here on the back with the seam here, because again, I want to get my seams pretty much together here on the back. I like to keep things as nice and neat, as organized as possible. We're also going to be adding a ribbon around here, which could give you a little bit of extra coverage there too. I like that because it covers up the seam. So we're going to go around and just glue this on. Glue just a little bit of layer on there. And get my fingers all stuck in the hot glue, of course. Let's just go. I do just little bits at a time. I'm not in any hurry. I like to make sure I'm lined up. About 2 inches at a time here. And just following it around. As I said, if you wanted a wider brim too, just cut that when you're cutting out your pattern. Just cut a little wider there. Give you a little extra area there. And we come around to the back side here. Doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to be adding a little bit of trim to it. So you can see now I have this extra piece hanging out here. What I'm going to do is I'm right there at that seam there. So I'm going to cut it. And that's the trick to it. So you don't need that extra little bit there. And then we'll just glue this together here. And this basically is going to be your hat. You're going to have it pretty much all set up here once the glue dries. Gives us our hat. A little bit of running glue there. So we have our hat, our basic hat. That's the trick to it there. What we want to do, what I do is I'm going to add something here. This is actually going with the fabric that I used here. But lots of times what I'll do is I'll pick out a ribbon. Ribbons are a lot easier to work with and everything because it's all straight, nice and neat. And what I'll do is sometimes I'll either start at the very back at that seam to cover it up, or if I'm going to be adding something, let's say this is going to be a holiday theme, I may just add it right here to the side, and then I'm going to put some holly leaves or some berries, and they're going to go over, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around, glue that to my hat, and I love to cover up seams. So I'm going to have a cut right here where I'm going to have a seam in it. But if I know I'm going to be adding a little trinket, adding a little bit of accessories to it or something, when I do fall type things, I'll put a flower there. I'll put some leaves and flowers, something that'll cover just that area up. So a little trick there on that. Let me give you a little bit more ideas here too, because that is the basic, simple how to make that hat. Now, little trick here too, when I'm working with a different type of body, let's say, if I got a cone or like this little guy here, I made him longer And the reason I made him longer, I'm actually working on a project where I'm doing needle felting on the back here. This is just getting started. This is part of the fun. I haven't been able to do any needle felting in a while. So this is going to be a scene on the back here by the time this is done. So just give you a little sneak peek there. But he's longer. And with him being longer, he's a little bit narrower. So my hat just doesn't quite work the same on that. So what I've done is when I go ahead and I cut out my piece for my hat, we got this folded over. And again, this is if you have another type of body, let's say you're using a sock or you're using something that is elongated a little bit more. You know how it narrows down at the top there. This is a little quick cheat. It also works if you want to do something a little bit more snug on it. Let's say you're making a gnome and you don't add arms, but you want to have a hat, a top hat for it. What I do is this is going to be the top up here where I'm going to put my circle. So the bottom, at the very bottom, I go in 1/2 inch and I cut up at an angle. I'll cut that pretty much right up to the top there. And it's, again, a little cheat. This is going to be on the back side when you sew it together. So you're not going to notice. People are not going to see. It's going to still look like it's a rounded hat. But it's going to fit snugger, if that's a word, snugger, firmer, more together on the gnome down here. Again, if you don't have arms, or if you do have a gnome that's thinner, like a cone gnome, you can do that. Also, when you're sewing it or when you're gluing it, you can glue in just a little bit more than just, like I do. I usually do, mine's usually a little bit less than 1/4 inch on my seam there. You can glue in just a little bit more down here at the bottom. And that way, you're going to get a tighter fit on your gnome there. Now, with the hats too, I do stuff them. I make sure I put stuffing in there so they sit well. I don't know if you guys remember this little guy here, but this way, once I get the stuffing in there, I got my top, widen it out just a little bit, put my seams in back there. I can put the hat on there. I can glue the back down. And then again, add my ribbon around the side. So there we have our basic hat there. Just following the pattern, follow it around, little trick there. Let me give you one more thing before we go, one more. Because I like this idea and I've done this a couple times and I haven't really showed it off really, but I'm working on another one, a little bit bigger, a little bit more fun type of thing, a little dressed up and everything, some shiny to it. But this is actually using the craft foam. You can use the foam and do the same thing. I've sewn it. You have to be a little bit more careful with your sewing that you're not pulling on it, or you can use the hot glue and glue on it. Same thing, it'll turn inside out. It is flexible. It'll move around. You can see that I did the seams in there. There's my original sewing seams there. But this is also a great idea if you want to get into doing the steampunk hats. These are nice for the felt floppy hats, the top hats, but this gives you an idea for the steampunk. There's some people out there doing some beautiful steampunk stuff. I mean, just beautiful. I love it. Because they're doing such a beautiful job on everything like that, I don't feel I can do justice to it, so I don't do that. But you can get the foam and do this to create a steampunk hat too. Just get the black, get the brown. As I said, there's a lot of great people out there doing stuff like that to make their hats and use the foam and make a beautiful steampunk hat. So this is the idea. This is how to put together, how I put together my hats like that. I hope that helps you out. I know I had a lot of questions on that after we did the vest there on how to make the top hat too. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. And I'd love to see your ideas. I always talk about that because I know you guys come up with the greatest things. You take it from there, add your embellishments, add the fun to it, and you can make some beautiful things. Thank you.